aplastic left heart syndrome, which is a terminal illness. So I found out in utero when I was about 6 weeks pregnant that he actually had a heart defect. They had missed it. So I had 3 options: heart transplant, most babies die waiting because baby hearts don't become available, 3-stage surgery, or I could let him die, and he would be dead within a few days. So we chose the 3-stage surgery. He had his first open heart when he was 6 days old. So that started the journey on with Caleb. What was supposed to be 3 surgeries ended up being 10 open hearts, 50 surgeries total. It was just a crazy course that we went through. Couldn't really go to school. He had a stroke at his second surgery, which left him developmentally delayed. The left side of his body was paralyzed. I had to do a lot of work with him to get that back, but it left him severely developmentally delayed. He understood some things, but he was just kind of all scattered with the things that he knew. So he couldn't attend school regularly because of his immune system was being compromised, and any type of respiratory infection could potentially kill Caleb. So I had an idea to build a virtual classroom for him. So I did that where he could Skype back and forth to school and actually be a part of a class and have a little bit of normalcy in our 4-wall prison. I mean, basically that's what we were. He had like maybe 2 months that he could actually be out around people, but flu season, we didn't go anywhere, we didn't do anything. So I was his full-time caregiver, made sure his medications, he had an NG tube, which I don't know if you know what that is, but we had to feed him through his nose, through his stomach. I didn't want to do another surgery and put in a G tube because then, Caleb was so little, and I think the heaviest he ever got was probably 42 pounds. So all the surgeries, he had a sudden death incident. We had been transferred up to Stanford for some of his surgeries because his heart was great, but everywhere they put a human patch of tissue, his body rejected it. So it was just surgery after surgery to get the flow back to his left lung. So we ended up at Stanford. Just a lot. We went everywhere. We were at UCLA. We were we went everywhere. Wherever our baby needed to go, that's where we went. When Caleb was about 1.5, my marriage fell apart because Caleb was my obsession. And I don't know if you know, but 90% of the families divorce within the first 5 years because it's hard. You lose yourself in your child or in the person that you're caring for. So we had to put a pacemaker in. We went to Stanford. We did all the tests, and at the moment, because Caleb was sick, he didn't qualify for a heart transplant. So his incision, unfortunately, got infected. They let us come home. They put us on palliative care, which is a step before hospice. Sent us home. So Dr. Bailey here at Loma Linda took his sutures out from getting the pacemaker. His incision got infected, and because he had a pacemaker, we had to put him on high-powered antibiotics. They actually had to open up his incision and let it heal from the inside out. But prior to that, Caleb had normal kid things. His adenoids were swollen and his tonsils were enlarged, so it was causing him to have sleep apnea. So on top of that, he was having normal kid things. So then we had the sudden death incident. We got the pacemaker. Incision got infected, so we went back to Loma Linda, and that was the beginning of the end for my son. He had to have a PICC line, and he had to have high-powered antibiotics. They decided to stop feeding him. So when he would go to the bathroom, it was already burning his hiney. But when they stopped feeding him, it became like acid, and it actually ate the top layer of his hiney off, like it was raw. So every time he would go to the bathroom, it would burn him. And so he had got influenza B. Well, I got influenza B. So when he had to go back to the hospital, I couldn't be there for those 2 days because I was so sick. So that morning, I was trying to he loved Frozen, so I was trying to get the character Elsa to come and just hold my baby's hand so that he could at least smile or something. So then I get a phone call from Loma Linda, and they said, Caleb's not doing good, you need to get here. So I did. He would always get to the brink of death, and then he would come back. And so, that day when I got there, they had to intubate him. He was just a mess. He was like, taking sips of breath, trying to breathe, and he couldn't, so we changed some of the settings. We had him the whole night. We had called all our family in because we thought he was going to die, but he didn't. So then the next day, the doctors the day before that day, they had called us in and said, hey, you need to make some decisions, like, how are you going to let Caleb die? I'm like, what? You want me to choose that? They're like, well, you could take out the tube and watch him struggle for air, or you could turn down his medications and let his body just slowly shut down. Well, they had done a blood gas before that, so we got the results, and they said, hey, Caleb's doing better, but we still had to make choices, and we had to draw our line. Like, where's the line? When are you going to stop? So his dad and I spoke. We drew our line. Caleb got better, and we had him a whole nother day, and then they were changing his epinephrine, and everybody was in and out because all of our family had come. So I went upstairs because I hadn't really spent time with him because we could only have 2 people at a time, and everybody was, making their rounds and wanted to hang out with him. So I went up there, and the nurse was changing his epinephrine, and all his numbers just started to fall. And I thought maybe he was just too sedated, so I started rubbing him, and I was like, baby, you gotta wake up, you gotta wake up. And he was laying like this, and he was intubated, and he tried to turn to me so fast because he heard my voice, and he started rubbing the pillow like, well, there you are, mama. And then his numbers crashed, and my baby died. So that's when after the nightmare started, because I had filed for unemployment with IHSS, because I thought I would at least have that, because even people who get fired get unemployment. So I thought I would at least have something to bridge the gap. And then that's when the next nightmare started, and I found out that parents and spouses, and if you take care of your parent, you're excluded. So I qualified in the worst time of my life. I was 45 years old for $189 worth of food stamps and a card to mental health. How am I supposed to pay my house payment? How am I supposed to pay my car payment? How am I supposed to survive? And who's going to hire me at 45? I've been taking care of my kid as a caregiver for 9.5 years. So I didn't have any relative work skills. And when I had went out, you still filled out an application on paper. When I came back into the world, everything was automated and online. I didn't know this world. I knew Yo Gabba Gabba and SpongeBob and medications and Caleb. So then I talked to a lady who worked for the unemployment office. We were on the phone for an hour. She was like, you know what, Cathleen, I'm just going to tell you the truth. The money's not coming. Because they kept giving me the runaround. I kept getting papers in the mail. And I thought I was going to get money. I thought I was going to have something coming. And I was already almost a month in of not being able to pay bills. So she was like, you're not going to get it. And I said, well, how do we fix this? She goes, well, it's a law. And the only way to fix it is change the law. So that started me on my mission. I called Assemblyman Obernolte, because he's my assemblyman. And his secretary was like, let's write a letter and let's start reaching out to all the legislators in California and let's see if we can't get someone to write a bill and get it started. So then about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from her. She said, oh, there's already a bill, AB 1930, Assemblyman Lackey. So then I called the Lackey's office, and I became great friends with him. And so that was almost 4 years ago. So I've been advocating, and I've been going to Sacramento, and I met a young lady here at the meeting when I came named Myrna, and she's part of the Hispanic Chamber. So then I started going there, and I started meeting all these people, and I got invited to all these different things, and meeting all these different legislators, and then I got invited to go up for a press conference in Sacramento, and I met everybody on the Appropriations Committee. Like, I didn't know anything about law until this happened. So I've been on the news for it. I've been to Washington, D.C. now 3 times, and I met the Vice President of the United States. I met the Treasurer. Like, God has just really opened these doors for me, and now we're writing legislation again, and it's AB 1993, and we're not asking for a study. We're demanding that they change this law, because I get back in the 70s, it probably made sense because families stayed together, and you had the 2 incomes. Well, now most families, 50% or more of regular families divorce. Well, 90% of special needs families divorce. So what income do you have to fall back on when your child, your parent, or your spouse passes away? You don't, because you're caring for them. So we've presented legislation. We did that on February 27th. It's in its infancy stage. We have to go before the advisory committees. I talked to Howard yesterday, and he thinks we're probably going to go to the health and welfare one. He was guessing, he didn't know. Health and welfare, and then because the bill is rather expensive, we're going to have to go in front of the economic board, whatever. And so now there's 8 Democrats on it. I'm working on trying to get a Republican on there so that we can make it a bipartisan bill, because then it'll be better. But the last time we ran legislation, we went through the Assembly and the Senate and we had no opposition, and that's unheard of. So I've reached out to Obernolte, I've reached out to Simon Lackey, who started the bill last time, and then I actually got a legislative award in Sacramento in August, and I had the pleasure of meeting Senator Grove, who is the minority leader of the House in Sacramento, and she's very excited to be a part of this, and she promised me that this year would be the year that we would get it changed. So it's exciting, and we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary, which is 3/18, and I was sharing that with her when I was in her office, and she was like, what's crazy, Kathleen? She was like, my birthday is 3/18. And it was just crazy, like how all this stuff, it just keeps falling into place, and how these things keep tying together. And it's really important now for us and you as IHSS members to let the people know what we're doing, because you don't want to not have that safety net. I'm still in debt. I'm still trying to recover, and it's been 4 years. I was working 2 jobs, working 3 and 4 weeks straight, trying to get back on my feet, and I'm still struggling too. So it's a nightmare to outlive your child. I think that's probably the hardest thing that anybody would ever have to do. And then for the system to fail us the way that it has, because of some law they created 30 years ago, like we need to change it. It's enough. And the one part of the bill that I was talking to Christina, which is the legislative director for UDW, she said that they're going to make it an option that if you want to opt into Social Security, the SSI part, it'll be 1% of your income that they'll have to take out for you to be a part of that. But they're going to try to make it to where to be an option and not, you don't have to, but it would make sense too, because when you go through those things, like especially with all the stuff that I've seen, and any caregiver, you do get PTSD, you do suffer from that. And the craziest thing, and then I'll open it up for questions, but after Caleb died, I did have PTSD. I mean, watching your baby lose their life and all the surgeries and the things that I watched, I did qualify for disability. But I found out that after 10 years, if you don't contribute it in any state in the United States, they absorb it back into the system. So even though I qualified for it, I hadn't contributed to SSI, so there was nothing in my disability account to pay me. So I literally got food stamps and a card of mental health. So that's why I'm so passionate. I wrote a book about Caleb's journey. I started a nonprofit organization back in 2006, and I've helped lots of kids over the years. And I really believe 2020 is going to be the year, but we have to come together. We have to call our legislators. I had started a petition. I gave her the link to it, and the more people that we get involved and the more we get out there and let people know that this bill is happening and that we have to urge our legislators, because they're the only ones that can change this. We can't. We can only ask them to do it for us. So does anybody have any questions?
How do you sign your petition?
It's on change.org. How can we get that?
We'll definitely provide a link.
Okay,
We'll send
it's
it
on
along.
change.org. We have almost 500 signatures. So if you could get the link and share it and let
Sure.
people know that it's. I mean, I really, truly, in my heart, believe that 2020 is going to be the year. So when I go up there to the press conference, I'm going to spend a whole day at the Capitol. I'm going to go to all the advisory committees. I've made a lot of friends, along this journey. I'm going to go back to Senator Grove's office. I'll go to the majority leader's office, and I'm going to fight, because it doesn't make sense. Why should you have to suffer any more than that? Like, why can't, if people who get fired for horrible things can get unemployment, why can't a parent or a spouse from a program that's run by our state and our federal government why can't we have that soft place to fall? And all we've done is try to provide the best life and the quality of care for our family members that we can. So I believe we can do it. I know we can. We have to come together, and we have to really be on our legislators and really put pressure on them to vote. And then our governor, I mean, it ultimately depends on him. But I feel like this time it's different because he has children and his spouse. So if he were to put himself in those shoes, you know, nobody ever wants to. How many people do you hear say, oh, when my kid dies? We anticipate our spouse. We anticipate our parents, never our children. You have a question?
Yeah, well, it's more of a comment. I actually want to thank you. Words cannot express how grateful I am for your struggles. I actually met you at the beginning of your journey. You might not remember me, but you shared.
I do remember you.
Okay, you shared your story with me, and I carried it with me, and you've helped so many children. And because of you, I was able to advocate for other children to have a patrol academy pass in their home. You made me believe it was possible, so I fought, and it was. So thank you.
Makes my heart happy.
So I wanted to go ahead and thank you. And I also wanted to ask you, you mentioned that some legislators are supporting you.
Yes.
Do you know if, well, could you mention those legislators so we know who we should be organizing to go lobby for?
Yes, Obernolte, like I've made such great friends over the past 4 years. It's insane. Like when I call Washington and I call these different offices, they're like, "Oh, hey, Cathleen, hold on a minute. Let me get whoever I'm calling for." Like we actually have like a friendship. And then I met Mr. Rosales at the Latino Coalition's, the Hispanic Chambers thing. I met Mr. Rosales, and he is the Latino Coalition in Washington, D.C. He's the secretary. So every time they have a meeting, he comps my tickets and is like, "Cathleen, get up here. I have so many people I want you to meet." And I'm telling you, when Caleb died, I had no idea at 45 what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I didn't plan for life after Caleb because I didn't know how long he was going to live. I didn't know. And so I told the Lord, I said, "You know what, God?" I said, "I don't got nothing. I got my mouth. Pretty good talking. People kind of like me." I was like, "And I'm willing to go wherever you want me to go. I got some fish and some bread, and if you want to use me, I'll do it. I'll go. You already know I started my organization, and my heart is for this community." And then all these doors just started opening. I met Myrna. She was like, "Oh, you gotta come." And now her and I are great friends. But to answer your question, Assemblyman Obernolte, we've become great friends. Assemblyman Lackey and I have become great friends. You know, we started this journey a long time ago. You know, he wrote the bill, and then we became friends. And then Senator Grove, when I was up there getting that legislative award, I just happened to be in her office at the right time. Had made friends with her director, his name's David, and he goes, "Wait, hold on a minute." So he went in her office, and he came back. He goes, "Hey, she has some time for you," and I was like, "Yes!" So then I went in there, and I wrote the book, and everywhere I go, I take my book, and I always tell people, you know, mine's just one window. There's over 100,000 people right now in the state of California in that same place. So what do their windows look like? And some of them know that their loved one is going to die, like they are. And so how about if we could get this law passed, and the ones that know will have such a relief, and the ones that don't know will never have to experience what I did or anybody else in the past. And so that's why I fight so hard, because I don't want anybody to know that pain that I knew after my son died.
So I'm gonna need your contact information.
Oh, I have cards. Everybody, I brought cards. Everybody. Do you have another question?
Is your book on Amazon?
It is on Amazon. It's called 9-Year Miracle, the Caleb Williams story. And all the proceeds from that book go to my organization so that I can continue to help families that have sick kids. So we help with gas cards, food cards, lodging, and in the unfortunate event, I don't think a family member should be out begging someone with a car sale or a car wash or a bake sale to bury their baby. That's their final act of love, and I don't. I'll cook plates, I'll do whatever, clean some houses, rake some yards, but I want that family to be able to grieve the proper way and not have to worry about those things.
Question.
Yes.
You mentioned, and so this is kind of a clarifying question, you mentioned before that you had a unanimous with both the Assembly and the Senate for the state on a previous bill. Did the governor veto it at that time?
He sure did.
Okay.
So what happened was we had got thousands of signatures, it went on his desk, and he said he had a committee, an IHSS committee that could get those answers, because we were seeking a study to show how it either positively affected people or negatively affected people. It was a $250,000 bill, and he said he already had a committee, and even before he got out of office, we never got answers. I kept calling, asking, but we never nothing. So that's why I became friends with the treasurer, our previous treasurer for California, and he said, we need to go to the federal government. He was like, California, we've tried, just go to the federal government. So that's when I started traveling up there and meeting with Feinstein and Harris. I met with Cook, and I met with McCarthy. And they all really support this. It's just, they just felt like if we could get it changed here in the state of California, then we would have a better chance getting it changed in the federal government, because it is California funds and federal funds together. And some other states have IHSS programs that are similar. So we want to make it all the way the same across the board so that no one has to suffer. So, yes.
I have both a question and a comment. First question is, what day would this be heard, you know?
We don't have a date yet, so, because we just presented it on February 27th, so we're waiting for those dates. So as soon as I get them, I will share the information with her so that you guys will know when we go in front of the advisory boards.
Okay, because I wanted, the comment I wanted to make was that, you know, I'm here from SEIU, I'm representing SEIU, you know,
Mhm.
union here in Sacramento County. I wanted to talk to our director that handles, you know, this, and I know there's meetings coming up this month and next month. I was asking maybe it would be one of those. I don't know, but I didn't know. So, and ask if they know about it, you know.
I'm in contact with them, but if you could let me know when that meeting is, I will definitely be there. Isn't it Butler? Is her name?
Our president? No, no, we have a different president now, but.
Oh, okay.
The person in charge of you know, laws and all this here, you know, is somebody else.
What's her name? Sergio?
No. No, Brandy Wolf.
I do know her.
You do know her?
Yes, I have her phone number, and I can call her and contact her. But if you could, I'll give you my card, and if you could let me know when that meeting is, then I'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I
'cause-
was asking when it's gonna be heard, so I can, I'm sure she would know, because I wanted to contact her to see what she had to say about this bill, and because I know this next month and next month is all the hearings coming up.
Mhm.
We in Sacramento County not gonna be involved in those, but our members from the Sacramento area will be.
Yes, UDW. That's Christina is the legislative director up there, and I'm.
So we're gonna have people involved, you know, just not, we're too far away, you know.
Right, I understand.
To get involved with that. But I just wanted to, talk to her, see if she knew about it, so that, comment to her, and hopefully she can also get behind it, so we can.
Yes, absolutely. We're great friends as well, and I will reach out to her.
Oh
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, but I'll mention it, you know.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. And your name, sir?
Enrique.
It's very nice to meet you. So, and I have cards for everybody. Yes.
First of all, being vice chair, I wanna share all of our condolences for Kayla. And, I think I get into other stuff saying that, but other than, I'm sure we all highly commend you for your braveness,
Yes.
for your, standing up about it, and everything that you do, all your fighting that you've done and that you plan on doing. I wanna thank you for that, because we need you, and we applaud you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll say this, and then I'll be quiet. But every time I go into a legislator's office, I'm very persistent. So you guys probably should just go ahead and change the law, because if you don't, I'm just gonna keep calling you, and I'm gonna keep coming here, and you're gonna get tired of me. They're like, oh, Cathleen, you're crazy. I'm like, but I'm serious, because you know why you don't fight as hard? It's because it doesn't affect you. But put yourself in my shoes, and what if it did? And what if it was your child, or your spouse, or your grandparent? I guarantee you would be fighting just as hard as me. So always think about that. Eventually, one day, we'll all be in this disabled community. We don't know when and we don't know how, but we all will be. And so shouldn't that transition be as smooth as it possibly can be? And then shouldn't the transition from this world to the next one be just as smooth as it can be? And the people that care for us, shouldn't they have a cushion to fall back on for giving up their life and taking care of them. Like, what's the big deal? And I know this bill is going to cost a couple $1 million because of how many people are currently in that situation. But why does it matter? We can spend millions of dollars on crazy things like, oh, let's get rid of the straws or let's get rid of this. We're talking about human lives here. And we're talking about people and survivors after that, you know, and we need to take care of them and we need to make sure that they have a safe place to fall when it does happen. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.